A desperate girl's simple trade for leftovers sparks an extraordinary journey where hope, healing, and an unlikely friendship defy all odds and change to lives forever. The city never slept, not really. Tall buildings sparkled with lights even at midnight, and the sound of cars and people kept echoing through the streets. But for Alina, this shining city was not a place of dreams. It was a place of survival. Every day, she walked the same broken roads with her old backpack and torn shoes. Eyes searching the ground for something to eat, something to sell, anything that could keep her alive for one more day. She was just 16, but her eyes looked older, eyes that had seen too much, too soon. She had no home. Her parents had died when she was 10. Since then, she had taken care of her little brother, Donnie. He was only 8 now and very sick. His cough never stopped, and she didn't have money for medicine. The free clinics told her there was nothing they could do unless she paid. Every morning, she left Donnie wrapped in blankets inside an abandoned building, promising she would return, with food and something to make him better. And every night, she came back with whatever little she found: stale bread, broken fruit, sometimes nothing. One cold evening, with her stomach growling and her mind full of worry, she passed by a 5-star hotel. The warm light from its windows made her stop. Rich people were eating inside, laughing, sipping drinks. She stood outside the glass doors, looking in. No one noticed her. Or maybe they did and just looked away. She walked behind the hotel to the back alley. That was where the kitchen waste was thrown. She had searched there before. Some chefs left scraps wrapped neatly in foil. It wasn't dignity, but it was survival. As she climbed up the side steps quietly, she looked toward a large balcony on the 2nd floor. A man sat alone at a table, eating slowly. He was in a wheelchair. His face was serious, his eyes cold. His dinner looked untouched: steak, mashed potatoes, warm bread. Alina couldn't look away. Something strange came over her. Maybe it was hunger, or maybe it was the feeling that she couldn't take it anymore. This life of begging, of watching her brother die slowly. She stepped forward, unsure of what she was doing. The man turned his head slightly, noticing movement. Alina raised her voice, heart racing. "Excuse me, sir?" she called. The man blinked, surprised. He wasn't used to anyone speaking to him like that. He was used to stares, pity, or fake smiles. Now that this girl, she looked him in the eye. "Will you trade your leftovers for a cure?" she asked. For a moment, silence. Then he laughed. Out of cruelty but confusion. "A cure," said, eyebrows raised. "For me?" She nodded. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was firm. "Yes, I can help you, but I need food. For me and my little brother." The man leaned forward in his wheelchair. "You think you can cure me, girl? Doctors couldn't do it. Surgeons couldn't fix me. You think you can?" said with a tired smile. "I don't promise miracles," Alina replied. "But I can try. My grandfather was a healer. He taught me some things before he died. I don't want money, just a meal." The man studied her. She didn't look like a liar. She looked desperate, the honest kind of desperate. Her clothes were wet from the rain, her hair tied back in a messy braid. But there was something in her eyes, not just hunger, but fire. "What's your name?" he asked. "Alina. I'm Nicholas Wade." That name meant nothing to her. She didn't know he was one of the city's richest men, a genius in technology, a man who had made millions before an accident had left him paralyzed from the waist down. All she saw was a man with food. All he saw was a girl who didn't flinch. When he mentioned his condition, Nicholas stared at his untouched plate and then back at Alina. "Fine, come up. Take the food. But if you're lying, I'll have you thrown out." Alina nodded quickly. "I'm not lying." She climbed the stairs and entered the balcony through the side door. The guards at the entrance gave her strange looks but said nothing when Nicholas waved his hand. She sat across from him carefully, trying not to look like she wanted to eat everything in one bite. He pushed the plate toward her. She didn't waste time. She took a small bite, then another. She hadn't eaten a real meal in days. Nicholas watched her. Something about her reminded him of someone, maybe himself. "Many years ago, when he had nothing, you said your grandfather was a healer?" he asked after a moment. She nodded while chewing. He was a herbalist in our village. People came to him from far away, used leaves, roots, pressure points. He taught me everything. Before he passed. Nicholas raised an eyebrow. And you think herbs will make me walk again? No, not just herbs. It takes time. Touch, oils, mixtures, and belief. But I have to try. Nicholas didn't know why he didn't stop her. Maybe because deep down he was tired of being hopeless. He had tried every doctor, every treatment, every hospital. Nothing had worked. Had told him he would never walk again. And maybe he had accepted it. Maybe that was worse than the paralysis. He looked at her empty plate. You want to try now? Alina nodded slowly. If you'll let me. He didn't believe in magic. But he was curious. I'll give you a week, he said. No promises. No expectations. You come here every night. If you're wasting my time, I'll know, she agreed. Before she left that night, Nicholas called the kitchen. Packed some food for her. Enough for two. Alina looked at him, surprised. Your brother? Needs to eat too, he said simply. She took the package with both hands, holding it like treasure. Thank you, she whispered. As she walked back through the rain, her heart was lighter. For the first time in weeks, she had hope. Food for her brother, and maybe a chance to help someone else too. Nicholas watched her leave. Still didn't believe in cures. But something about that girl had stirred a long-dead feeling in him. Maybe hope wasn't such a foolish thing after all. He didn't know it yet. But his life had just changed, and so had hers. Alina came the next evening, just like she had promised. She wore the same worn-out clothes, and her shoes were even more soaked with rain than the day before. But this time, there was a different expression on her face. It was not the look of a desperate, hungry girl. It was the look of someone who had a purpose. She clutched a small cloth bundle in her hand, tied tightly with string. Inside it were a few dried herbs, a little oil in a glass bottle, and something her grandfather had once called healing salt, a rough mixture of crushed plants and mineral powder that had helped many back in her village. She had carried it around for years, waiting for the right moment to use it again. Nicholas Wade was already sitting on the balcony when she arrived. He had asked the guards to let her in without questions. The moment he saw her, he gave a short nod and wheeled himself slightly back, making space for her to sit beside him. You came back, said quietly. I said I would, she answered. She placed her bundle on the table gently and looked at him with steady eyes. I'm ready to start. Nicholas chuckled under his breath, amused but still curious. You do realize I don't believe in this, right, herbs? Pressure points? This isn't some village. This is the city. We have real doctors here, Alina nodded. I know, and I'm not here to prove anything. I'm just asking for a chance to try. He sighed and leaned back in his chair. Fine. What do you need me to do? Just sit still. She opened the cloth bundle slowly, carefully. She dipped her fingers in the oil and crushed some of the herbs together in her palm, mixing them with the healing salt. A light, earthy smell rose in the air, something wild, old, and strangely comforting. Nicholas frowned slightly as he inhaled it. Alina crouched beside him and gently lifted one of his legs. He didn't stop her. He couldn't feel it anyway. His legs had been dead for nearly 4 years, ever since a car crash had shattered his spine. The muscles had weakened, and the doctors had done everything they could. Physical therapy, surgeries, experimental treatments, none of it had worked. His legs remained lifeless, and hope had slowly drained out of him. But now, this girl, this skinny, rain-soaked teenager, was sitting beside him, rubbing his feet with oil and humming softly under her breath, just like her grandfather used to do. She touched certain spots on his toes, pressed into his heel, and ran her fingers along the back of his knees. She moved with confidence, as if she had done this 100 times. Her hands were rough, but careful. Nicholas, though skeptical, found himself relaxing for the first time in weeks. Tell me if you feel anything, she said, not looking up. He was about to answer no. But then he paused. There was something, not exactly a feeling in his leg, but in his chest. A strange warmth. It's not physical, not painful, just different. I feel calmer, he said slowly. That's good, Alina replied. Healing begins with calm, he almost laughed. It sounded like something out of a fairy tale. For the next hour, she worked in silence. She didn't talk about herself or ask him about his life. She just focused. When she finally stood up, her fingers were stained with oil and her back ached. From crouching, "I'll come again tomorrow," she said. Nicholas didn't stop her. He simply nodded. The following night, she returned again. The night after that, each evening, she brought different herbs, different techniques. Some nights she used oils, sometimes just pressure points. Once she brought a warm stone wrapped in cloth and placed it on his spine, whispering things in her native language. Nicholas found himself waiting for her visit like a child waiting for a bedtime story. And something started to change, not dramatically. Not like the movies, but slowly, surely, he began to notice things. One night, as she pressed into his foot, he thought he felt a pinch. Just a tiny one. He didn't say anything right away. He didn't want to sound foolish. But the next night, it happened again, this time stronger. A tingling sensation, like ants crawling on his skin. "Did you just feel that?" Lena asked, looking up quickly. Nicholas looked stunned. "Yes," he whispered. "I did." It was the first time in years he had felt anything in his leg. The next morning he called his personal doctor. Tests were done. Nerve responses still weak, but present. It was impossible, the doctor said, but it was real. Alina continued her visits. Now Nicholas asked her questions. He wanted to know about her grandfather, about her childhood, about how she had learned all this. "My grandfather believed that the body has memory," she explained. "It remembers how to heal if you teach it again. But it needs time and trust." Nicholas listened carefully. The first time he wasn't talking about money or stocks or business plans. He was listening to a girl who lived in the streets who had nothing, but was slowly giving him something no one else could hope. And in return, started helping her quietly. He told his assistant to find out where her brother was staying. He arranged for medicines to be delivered to that area. He gave the hotel kitchen orders to pack more food each night for her. He didn't tell her right away. He just did it. One day, Alina arrived looking tired and shaken. Nicholas noticed immediately what happened. He asked, "My brother. His fever isn't going away. He's coughing blood now. I don't know what to do." Nicholas looked at her for a long time. He could see that behind her strength she was still just a child. A child carrying the weight of the world on her back. "Bring him here," he said suddenly. "What?" She looked shocked. "Bring him here. I'll have a doctor see him. A real one. Someone who won't ask for money." Tears welled up in her eyes. She shook her head. "I can't. People like us. Right. We don't belong here." "Yes, you do." Nicholas said softly, "You do now." The next day, Donnie was brought to the hotel in a private car. He was weak, thin, and scared. But Nicholas made sure he was treated with respect. A top pediatrician was called. Tests were run. Medications were started. Alina watched from the corner, unsure whether she was dreaming. Later that night, Nicholas said, "You were honest with me? I'll be honest with you now. I've had more money than I can ever spend. But none of it ever made me feel alive again." "You did." Alina didn't know what to say. "You came to me for leftovers," Nicholas added. "But you gave me something priceless." And then he smiled. Really smiled for the first time in years. That night, Alina sat beside him like always and started her healing work. But this time, Nicholas placed his hand gently on hers before she began. "Thank you," he whispered. The strange bond between the rich man and the poor girl was no longer strange. It was real, and in the quiet corners of that grand hotel, something was growing stronger, everyday faith, friendship, and a miracle that no one saw coming. Neither of them knew what the future held. But one thing was clear. Something had already begun. Something powerful. Something that couldn't be bought. Alina had now become a regular part of Nicholas Wade's life. Every evening, just as the sun began to set, she would quietly arrive at the hotel, carrying her bundle of herbs and oils. She would nod politely at the guards who had now gotten used to seeing her. Though she wore the same clothes, something about her had changed. She walked with more purpose. There was still tiredness in her eyes, but there was also determination. Nicholas had changed too. The man who once sat in silence, annoyed with life, now waited eagerly each evening for Alina's arrival. He had become curious about everything, not just about her strange treatments, but about her as a person. He asked questions not as a rich man demanding answers, but as someone who genuinely wanted to understand. One evening after Alina had finished massaging his legs, Nicholas leaned back in his wheelchair and looked up at the sky. The stars were beginning to show. The air was calm. "Do you believe I'll walk again?" he asked softly. Alina looked at him and nodded. "Yes." Nicholas smiled. "You say it like it's so simple." She shrugged. "It's not simple, but belief is the first medicine." He was quiet for a moment. "You know, when the accident happened, the doctors said I was lucky to be alive. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt broken, like I had been thrown away." Alina didn't say anything. She just sat beside him. "I had friends," he continued, "but they slowly stopped visiting. My business partners started making decisions without me. My house felt like a prison. And even though I had everything, money, care, comfort, I felt like I had nothing." Alina understood that feeling. She had felt it every night she returned to her brother with empty hands. Nicholas looked at her. "But then you came, with nothing but herbs and courage. And suddenly, I felt alive again." That night, something changed between them. They were no longer just a rich man and a poor healer. They had become two broken souls trying to heal each other. As days passed, Nicholas started feeling more. First, it was just tingling in his feet. Then he could feel pressure when Alina pressed down on his toes. One day he moved his big toe slightly, and Alina saw it. "Did you see that?" he asked, almost in shock. "Yes," she said with wide eyes. "You moved." He laughed, a real loud laugh that echoed through the balcony. It was the first time he had laughed like that in years. For him it was more than just a movement. It was a miracle. But Alina didn't stop. She kept working every day with the same care, the same dedication. She changed the herbs, adjusted the pressure points, and sometimes just sat beside him when he needed silence. Her healing was not just of the body, it was of the heart, the mind, the soul. Nicholas began sharing more about his past. He told her about his childhood, about how he was raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs. He had worked hard to become successful, built his company from the ground up. But in chasing success, he had lost the simple joys of life. "I didn't even know my neighbors," he said one day. "I was always too busy." Lena told him about her grandfather, a kind man who never turned anyone away. He had healed both rich and poor, and never asked for money. He only asked for respect and honesty. I remember him saying, "Alina told Nicholas, the body can break, but if the heart stays strong, healing will come." Nicholas closed his eyes. He was a wise man. Then, one evening, as Alina arrived, Nicholas stopped her. "I want to help you now," he said. She looked confused. "You already do. You feed me and my brother?" "No," he said firmly. "I want to do more. I want to help your brother fully. He should not be lying in a broken room waiting for medicine. I've arranged a proper hospital for him, with real doctors. It's already done." Alina was speechless. Her hands shook slightly as she clutched her bundle. "I can't repay you." "For that," she whispered, "you already have," Nicholas said. "You gave me hope." She nodded slowly, eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she didn't feel like a beggar. She felt like someone who mattered. Nicholas also made another decision. He told his assistant to contact his old therapist, someone who had once worked with him before he gave up on recovery. The therapist came to the hotel and tested his legs. There was real progress. Muscles that had once refused to respond were now showing life. The therapist was amazed. "What have you been doing?" he asked Nicholas. Nicholas smiled and simply pointed at Alina. "She did it." The therapist laughed in disbelief. "She's not even trained. She's trained by life," Nicholas replied. "And that's more than most of us." News started to spread, but only quietly. Nicholas had told his staff to keep things private. He didn't want the media, not yet. He wanted to protect Alina. One day, as they sat together in the evening breeze, Nicholas asked, "Why do you really do this?" "Alina, not just for food, not just for your brother. Why do you care so much?" Alina looked at the sky, thinking for a long time, and she said, "Because if I don't, who will? I've seen people suffer and die on the streets. People walk past without looking. My grandfather used to say, if you have two hands, use them to lift someone else. That's all I have, my hands. And if I can use them to heal even one person, maybe that's enough." Nicholas was quiet. Her words hit him hard. He had always believed power came from money, position, and knowledge. But now he was learning that true power came from kindness. That night, he didn't want her to leave. They talked until it was late. About dreams, about pain, about people they had lost. Nicholas told her about his mother's last words. Lena told him about the night her parents died and how she had promised never to let her brother feel alone. In those quiet moments, something even stronger than healing grew between them: trust. The next morning, Nicholas tried something he hadn't done in 4 years. With support from his therapist and a special device, he stood up. His legs shook. His hands gripped the bars tightly. But he stood. Tears filled his eyes. Alina wasn't there that morning. She had gone to visit her brother. But when she returned and saw him standing with the help of the device, she dropped her bag and ran to him. "You did it," she cried. "No," he said, smiling. "We did it." She helped him sit down again and hugged him tightly. For once, he didn't feel like a broken man. He felt whole. That evening, they sat watching the city lights, same lights Alina used. "To stare at from the shadows, you're not just a healer," Nicholas said. "You're a light." She shook her head. "I'm just a girl trying not to fall." "But you lift others while doing it," he whispered. She looked at him and smiled. In that moment, they both knew that their lives were never going to be the same again. And whatever happened next, it would be together. The rich man who had everything but nothing, and the poor girl who had nothing but gave everything, had somehow met at the exact right moment. And fate was just getting started. Nicholas Wade's life had started moving in a direction he never thought was possible again. Every day brought a new change, not just in his body, but in his heart. The man who had once locked himself in silence was now surrounded by small pieces of hope, and all of it started because of a poor, determined girl with a bag of herbs and a heart full of faith. It had now been several weeks since Lena began treating him. His progress was no longer just small movements. He could now lift both legs slightly without help. With assistance, he could even stand for a few minutes. Every time he did, he looked like a man discovering himself again. His doctors and physical therapists were shocked. They couldn't understand what was happening. Nicholas, however, had stopped trying to explain it through science. He had started believing that sometimes healing wasn't just about medicine. Sometimes it came from people who carried nothing but love, willpower, magic in their touch. Nicholas now insisted that Alina be treated like family. She was no longer just a street girl visiting a rich man. She was someone whose presence mattered. The hotel staff respected her. The chef prepared food specially for her and her brother. Alina would come every evening, do her work, talk with Nicholas, and quietly return to her brother's side. But change wasn't only happening in Nicholas's life. Alina's younger brother, Donnie, had also started to recover. With proper medical care, warm meals, and clean clothes, the boy who once coughed all night was now smiling again. Nicholas had placed him in a private children's hospital. Every weekend, Alina would bring Donnie to visit. Nicholas would watch them play in the garden, laughing and running, and something in his chest would feel warm. For a man who had once believed he'd never feel joy again, this was priceless. One evening, Nicholas was sitting in the garden with Alina. The sky was glowing orange with sunset, and a gentle breeze passed through the trees. He looked at her and asked, "What do you want to do with your life?" Alina smiled, unsure how to answer. No one had asked her that in years. "I don't know," she said after thinking. "Never had time to dream." "You should," Nicholas replied, "because now you can." She looked at him, surprised. "Why do you care so much?" "'Cause you didn't care about who I was when you first met me," he said. "You didn't see a rich man in a wheelchair. You saw a person who needed help. So that matters more than anything I've ever earned." Alina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I just didn't want to lose the only skill I had. I didn't know if I could really help you. I only knew that I had to try." "And you did," Nicholas said. "You changed everything." As the weeks passed, Nicholas's strength returned faster. His therapists increased the sessions. He could now walk a few steps using a walker. Every step felt like a mountain, but every step also felt like a victory. One afternoon, he called Alina to his office. When she arrived, she found him standing. Slowly, shaking but standing without support, eyes filled with tears. "I wanted you to see it first," he said, "because this is your miracle." She couldn't speak. She just stood there, her hands covering her mouth, tears running down her cheeks. Nicholas sat back down and handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "A school form," he replied. "A scholarship. I've arranged for you to attend one of the best medical institutes in the city. You'll get formal training. Learn everything your grandfather taught you, and more." "But I'm not qualified," she said quickly. "I didn't even finish high school." "You will now," he said. "I've also arranged a tutor. For you, you'll catch up. You're smart, Alina. The world needs more healers like you." She held the envelope tightly and nodded, unable to stop crying. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Nicholas replied, "by helping me stand again." Word began to spread quietly. At first, only a few people knew what was happening, that Nicholas Wade, the once paralyzed millionaire, was walking again. And when asked how it happened, he only gave one answer: Alina. But not everyone was ready to believe in her story. One day, a journalist showed up at the hotel, asking for Nicholas. He had heard rumors and wanted to write an article about the recovery. Nicholas refused. "I don't want headlines," he said. "I want peace." But the journalist was persistent. He waited outside the hotel, followed staff, even tried to approach Alina. She became scared and told Nicholas. He decided it was time to face the world. He invited the journalist in, sat down for an interview, and said everything, every detail. He spoke of the accident, the years of depression, and how a poor girl with herbs and faith had done what no hospital could. The next day, the story hit the newspapers and online platforms. Paralyzed tech giant saved by street girls healing. Touch? It became national news. People were curious. Some were amazed. Others were skeptical. But no one could ignore it. Alina's life changed overnight. She received letters from doctors, offers from TV shows, and calls from medical researchers. People wanted to study her methods. Others wanted to test her. But she stayed quiet, focused on her work and on her brother. Nicholas protected her from the noise. He made sure she wasn't overwhelmed. When reporters tried to crowd the hotel, he personally went out and told them, "Leave her alone. She is not here for your headlines." One evening, after the chaos had calmed down, Nicholas and Alina sat on the hotel rooftop, looking at the city lights. "I never wanted attention," Alina said. "I only wanted food for my brother. Look where that simple wish led us," Nicholas replied. "You saved me, Alina." We shook her head. "We saved each other." Nicholas placed a hand on hers. "This story, it's not over yet. There's so many people out there, suffering, forgotten. What if we help them too?" Alina looked up. "How?" "Together," Nicholas said. "We'll start something, a foundation. In your name, we'll find children like you, the ones with gifts, with healing hands, with courage, and we'll give them the tools to shine." Alina was quiet, thinking. Then she smiled. "Yes," she said. "Let's do that." And from that moment, a new mission was born. Not just healing one man, not just saving one boy, but changing many lives with kindness, with belief, and with action. A week later, Nicholas held a small press conference. He walked to the stage with a cane. Cameras flashed, people cheered, but he didn't smile for the cameras. He smiled for Alina, who stood quietly in the crowd. Watching, he spoke only a few words. Sometimes, the people who seem like they have the least are the ones who give the most. I was broken. Alina healed more than my body. She healed my heart. This foundation is not a charity. It's a promise to never ignore the quiet heroes among us. The applause was thunderous. Alina didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her work had spoken louder than any words ever could. And though the world had finally noticed her, she remained the same, simple, silent, strong. The poor girl who had once begged for leftovers had now become a symbol of hope. And the man who once laughed at her was now walking because of her touch. Neither of them had planned any of it. But sometimes the most powerful stories are not the ones we chase. They're the ones that chase us. Months had passed since that unforgettable press conference where Nicholas Wade, once paralyzed and hopeless, had walked across the stage with a cane. But what truly stunned people wasn't the miracle of his steps. It was the reason behind them. A teenage girl from the streets, with no medical degree, no clinic, and no equipment, had become the person responsible for giving him back his life. And now, the world wanted to know everything about her. But Alina didn't care about fame. She didn't care about interviews or spotlights or applause. Her world remained small and grounded. Her brother Donnie, her evening visits to Nicholas, and her quiet desire to keep learning and healing. Even after the media attention exploded, she still tied her hair in the same rough braid, still carried her cloth bundle of herbs, and still refused to speak unless she had something important to say. Nicholas respected that. He never forced her into the spotlight. Instead, he worked quietly to protect her peace and build something meaningful in her name. Together, they started a foundation called the Alina Project, a program dedicated to finding and supporting natural healers, herbalists, forgotten talents who lived in poor areas, especially children like Alina. The goal wasn't just charity. It was about recognition, dignity, and giving people the tools to use their gifts. The project began small. They opened a training center in the city. Alina visited it once a week to teach the basics of healing touch, herbs, and body. Pressure points the same way her grandfather had taught her. More children joined, and their stories were all similar: abandoned, ignored, struggling, but full of potential. Nicholas funded everything. But he insisted the heart of the project would always be Alina. She was the soul behind it. Her picture was not on any posters. There were no fancy statues. But her presence was felt in every classroom, every small garden where herbs were grown, and in every whispered story that students passed to one another, the story of the girl who healed, a man the world had given up on. Meanwhile, Donnie was doing well too. With proper treatment, his health improved rapidly. He had gained weight, his cough disappeared, and he had returned to school. Nicholas made sure he had the best teachers and supplies. Alina always made time for him, no matter how busy she became. Every night, they ate dinner together in their new small apartment near the training center. It was simple, but it was home. For the first time in years, they didn't sleep with fear or hunger. Nicholas, on the other hand, was rebuilding his life as well, but it was different this time. Before the accident, he had been driven by profits and competition. Now he was driven by meaning. He sold part of his company and donated most of it to the foundation. He stopped attending high society events and instead spent his time visiting hospitals, meeting children, and listening to stories from the poor. Whenever someone asked him why he had changed, he would answer the same way: because a girl who had nothing gave me everything. One evening, Nicholas invited Alina and Donnie to a quiet dinner on the rooftop garden of the hotel where they first met. It was peaceful, with candles, soft music, and warm food. They laughed, shared memories, and talked about how far they had come. Nicholas looked at Alina and said, "Do you ever think about that night when you asked me to trade my leftovers for a cure?" Alina smiled. "Yes, I almost didn't say it. I thought you'd be angry." He chuckled. I was surprised. I had never heard something so bold from anyone before, but I'm glad you did. "I was hungry," she said softly. "But more than food, I needed someone to believe in me." Nicholas nodded, "And you made me believe in myself again." There was silence for a moment, but it wasn't empty. It was full of memory, gratitude, and something deeper, a connection that couldn't be explained with words. Then Nicholas stood up, without a cane, Alina's eyes widened. You're walking without help. He took a few steps toward her. For weeks now, I wanted to surprise you. She stood up and hugged him tightly, her eyes full of tears. I'm so proud of you. And I'm proud of you, he whispered back. The rooftop breeze blew softly as they stood there, two people from different worlds, brought together by fate. Later that night, as they sat watching the stars, Nicholas said, There's something else I've been thinking about. What? She asked. I want to expand the Alina project, not just in this city. All across the country, maybe even other countries. Alina looked uncertain. That's big. So are your dreams, he replied, and I'll help.
Oh.
But I want you to lead it. I don't know how, she said honestly. You'll learn, Nicholas said. Same way you learned healing. One step at a time. Lena nodded slowly. She knew he was right. Her life had already changed in ways she never imagined. She had gone from a hungry girl with herbs in her pocket to someone who had helped change the world of a millionaire. And now, maybe many others too. But she still remained simple. She still knelt beside patients with respect. She still washed her hands with river water before beginning treatments in villages. She still taught every child in her class that healing is not just about herbs, but about kindness, attention, and belief. Years passed. The foundation grew. Thousands of children were helped. Some became doctors, some became healers, some just learned to believe in themselves. Again, Alina became a quiet legend, not famous in the way celebrities are, but known. Deeply in places where real stories are told in slums, in remote villages, in small classrooms, and in the hearts of those who had lost hope. One day, many years later, Nicholas sat on a stage at a global health summit. He was now old, but strong. A reporter asked him, "What was the turning point in your life?" He smiled and said, "When a girl with no shoes, no education, and no fear asked me for my leftovers and gave me back my life." And somewhere in the back row, sitting quietly with her students, Alina smiled. She didn't need applause. She had already won the greatest. Reward the power to give hope. Her story began with hunger, but it ended with healing the world. And to this day, people still whisper the story of how a poor girl knocked on the heart of a paralyzed millionaire and woke it up forever.